and welcome to our webinar, Women Empowering Women, Higher Education Edition, hosted by Genially. I'm Kat, your moderator for today's talk, and I'm here from the Genially team, and I am about to be joined by a fantastic panel of inspiring women in higher education to explore their experiences, challenges, and successes, but most importantly, we're here to provide some valuable insights and strategies for empowerment. Before we dive in and I start to introduce you to our fantastic panelists, just a few housekeeping things. Please do make sure to engage with us throughout the webinar in the chat. So we have the chat both in our LinkedIn and YouTube in front of us. So if you have any thoughts, questions, or comments as we explore these important topics, please feel free to put them in the chat as we really want to listen to them. And if we have time at the end, we'd like to offer up some of those questions to our panelists. Also, please feel free to let us know your thoughts and feelings on the webinar throughout our social media. So follow us on all of our social medias, and we'd love to hear you getting involved in the conversation. Okay. All right, so let's dive straight in and introduce you to our first panelist. So our first panelist today is Dr. Alicia Magruder, the Interim Assistant Dean at the Centre of Learning, Design and Technology for Johns Hopkins School of Engineering. Hi, Alicia. So nice to have you with us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on the talk. So Alicia leads a team of learning design professionals providing over 24 master's degree programs. Wow, Alicia, how did you do that? You're a superwoman. Alicia has spearheaded numerous faculty developments, including the Faculty Forward Academy, the JHU Excellence in Online Teaching Coursera, and the JHU Online Excellence Symposium. Wow. So if you didn't think she wasn't enough of a superwoman, she's a dedicated researcher with a focus on educational technology, faculty development, and learning design. She's going to bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to our discussion today. So thank you so much for joining us, Alicia. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's an incredible amount of experience. So where are you joining us from today? That's the big question.
I'm in Howth, which is a part of Dublin, Ireland.
Yeah, so you're not too far from me today.
Right. Just a short plane ride over. Only an hour.
Yeah, not too far at all. Thank you. So what are you doing in Ireland?
I'm actually on a Fulbright award. So I'm working at Dublin City University with some faculty in their School of Education there and collaborating with our engineering faculty as well. So
oh my gosh, that's so incredible.
I'm still doing my job, my normal job, but I'm also doing this.
That's incredible. Wow. Balancing all the hats then, wearing all the hats at the same time.
Yes. We do that,
I see your son managed to get your AirPods for you as well. So managing
that
hat as well. All right. Thank you so much, Alicia. We'll bring you back in a second whilst we introduce the rest of our panelists. Thank you. All right, so our second panelist is another incredible woman leading in the field of instruction design and online education. Please join me in welcoming Maddie Kadish, who heads up the instruction design team at George Washington University. Hi, Maddie. How are you doing?
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us. So alongside her work at George Washington University, Maddie serves as the chair of an Instructional Innovation Committee, a central hub for faculty and staff engaged in pioneering pedagogical efforts. Wow. She's played key roles in various organizations, including managing online learning for PBS, serving as an instructional designer for Pearson Education, and contributing to multimedia projects at Harvard Business School. Incredible wealth of experience there, Maddie. Incredible. But outside of her professional commitments, this is exciting as well. Maddie is an indie film enthusiast and a respected contributor to film-related publications. Residing in Arlington with a husband and daughter, Maddie, we're delighted to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I think this will be really fun.
Yeah, me too. I mean, incredible, balancing all the hats as well, various different. I love that you mentioned there all of your interests outside of work as well. How did you start getting involved in indie films? That's incredible. Has that always been something you're interested in?
Oh my gosh. Well, I started my career as a video producer. And then when I moved into instructional design, I sort of missed a little bit of that. So I kind of had both going on at the same time for a little while.
Fantastic. Wow. Well, obviously there's a lot of amazing things that women do outside of their professional environment as well. So really excited to touch on that as well. So Maddie, thank you so much. I'll bring you back in a second while we introduce our final panelist. So there we go. See you in a second. Okay, and our final panelist is another pioneer in the field of instruction design. Please join me in welcoming the fantastic Brianna Basanta from the Senior Instruction Designer for the Division of Continuing and International Education's Digital Learning and Design Institute at the University of Miami. Hi, Brianna. Wow, that was a mouthful. How do you do that?
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Wow, what a mouthful. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Brianna. We're so happy to have you on the call with us today.
So happy to be here. I'm very excited.
Yeah, so hopefully I will be able to, the rest of your incredible wealth of experience, I'll be able to say in less amount of words. So Brianna serves as a senior instruction designer at the Digital Learning and Design Institute, that's a lot less longer, where she collaborates with faculty to craft high quality online courses that engage and empower learners. Previously also playing part of the FIU Online team, amazing team at FIU Online. She embraces the use of interactive tools to foster meaningful learning experience and is particularly interested in the use of AI, recently researching best practices for higher ed digital assessments and the full use of chatbots. Wow, that's incredible. Brianna also currently manages and writes for the online teaching resource, a newsletter aimed at providing valuable insights and resources to faculty at DLD. And I just know her insights are going to be incredible and super valuable for our chat today. So thank you so much, Brianna, for joining us.
Thank you, Kat, for having me here.
You're very welcome. So where are you joining us from today?
I'm in Miami.
Oh, great. Is it sunny? I know that's a very English thing to ask. Is the weather good? But
Yes, actually the weather's getting a little bit hotter now. So we had our couple weeks of winter and now it's getting a little bit warmer here.
Oh, that's what we like to hear. Here's for good weather in the UK as well going forward. If we've got any people joining us from the UK, I know Alicia is joining us from near the UK, so I don't know if the weather's any good. No, it normally isn't. So
it was a little sunny today, so I'll take it.
Yes, wins. All right, so warm welcome to our fantastic panelists. And now on to our topics of conversation. I'm super excited to hear your guys' thoughts. I know it's going to be a really interesting conversation. So we have 3 topics of conversation we'd like to discuss today, all around our panelists' thoughts and perspectives. I always like to point out when it comes to anything to do with gender, anything to do with equality, anything to do with female empowerment, I genuinely feel there are no rights or wrongs, no corrects, no rules. It's just the focus on the individual experience of women and how we experience our life. So the idea here is that we try to find some common themes and strategies. You might agree with them, you might not, but the idea is we're here to kind of discuss those together. So with that, let's start with our first theme, which is all around breaking barriers. So when we're talking about breaking barriers, we'd like to take a look at the various obstacles women face in higher ed, and some of you guys' strategies to overcome them. So just a kind of general idea of your thoughts around the barriers that women face at the moment in higher education. So with that, my first question to you guys is, how would you describe the current state of gender equality for women in higher education? You know, whether that be around, that's just a general question about whether you think that's salary, job opportunities, anything you're wanting to talk about. How would you describe what it's like for women working in higher education at the moment? I don't know if, Maddie, should we start with you? Is that good for you to start on that one?
Sure. I'd also be curious what you all think. I personally think, you mentioned salaries. I think just in general, women's salaries are lower than men's everywhere. But I think certainly higher ed, which is a little bit annoying. Mm-hmm. I think actually I have seen some positives. I appreciate how you said that it's sort of our personal thoughts and opinions, because when I was thinking about this question, I came from a more corporate environment. So in terms of comparing to that, I actually find higher ed to be a little sort of easier to navigate, in the sense of I feel like work-life balance is better in higher ed than my experience in corporate. And also I find that this sort of idea of like what leadership means, I personally find a little more diverse in higher ed. I feel like the sort of typical leadership is like authoritative or that sort of thing. And I feel like higher ed is a little more open to things like, you know, a good leader asks questions, listens to people, takes information in, you know, can provide a happy, positive environment. I don't mean to be so down on corporate at all, but I just found it was a little more open, just in my experience. So I think that's really positive, those two areas.
Sure. Brianna, do you have any opinions on that or anything in terms of the question or anything that you're wanting to particularly say?
Sure. Maddie made some very good points, especially about that work-life balance. I've only stayed in higher education, so I guess I'm very lucky in that I've always been able to maintain my work-life balance, and I've never worked like for like an organization that wasn't important for them. But I do want to see more representation in terms of women in leadership roles. I've seen that we have been bridging that gap with those influential leaders as like directors or deans of colleges, or even instructional design managers. But I still think we have some work to go with that. And particularly, I think in the STEM fields, those technical fields, we need to see less representation of women in leadership roles. Also, like the strategy and I guess approaches to leadership are kind of like different for women versus men. I think a woman can't look at how a man crafted his career into leadership and take that exact same approach. She has to put a little bit more thought into it, and to see how that will kind of vibe with the rest of the team that she's managing.
That's a really interesting point. It'd be really good to come back on that in terms of when we talk about strategies for how you deal with that, because that's definitely something I've heard resonating with various women that I know, both professionally and personally, saying, you know, when women are at work, they have to be a bit more clever about the way they do things, and you know, they have to think a little bit more carefully. They can't, you know, have to be a bit more tactical about the way they approach things, especially when it's such a field which is so dominated by men. Have to be a lot more tactical about that sort of stuff. So that'd be really interesting to have a look at. What do you think, Alicia, about the question? Is there anything? What's your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I can relate to what Brianna and Maddie have said, but I also think it depends on the culture of the place that you're at too. I came from another institution. Currently in my institution, I can say what Maddie said is very much my sentiment, although I definitely think it's changing, but there are definitely more men in leadership roles across my institution. But at a former institution I was at, I definitely faced a lot of barriers, especially after I had my child. They call it the maternal wall. You can look it up. There's a lot of writing on that. And because of that situation, I actually left that institution for my current institution for more flexibility and more work-life balance, and to be able to have raise my son in the way that I felt was right for us.
Yeah.
The institution that I was at before, and a lot of things have changed there now, so I'm not trying to call them out or anything, but like there were some situations on the leadership at the time, which again has changed, that really made it difficult for me to be able to have my situation the way that was best for us. So I think there's still, and that was only, he's 9 now. I'm looking at him across the living room here. So he's, older now, and maybe hopefully things have changed a little, but that was still like within a 10-year period. So I still think we as women face a lot of challenges, and I've read a lot about how, COVID has affected women. And, fortunately in my institution now, a part of the culture of my group that I work within is that we do work remotely. All of my learning design team is remote. So we did not experience so much of what you read about, but I know that other places have, and higher education is definitely a part of that as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Sure, I think that's a really nice that reads really nicely onto something I really want to discuss with you ladies, which is the idea of a healthy work-life balance, which I think is really difficult and is something I hear a lot of women struggling with. Is the idea of a healthy work-life balance and wanting that and struggling sometimes to find that balance. So I don't know whether this would be good to bring up, why is a healthy work-life balance for you guys so important? And are there any strategies that you guys use to implement that? So I know I both, Alicia, Maddie, you mentioned about, the struggles that you had when you came back from having children. What was kind of strategies that you implemented to promote that? Maddie, I don't know if you want to start in terms of your...
Sure. Yeah, I think that I think the issue with FMLA, I mean, it can, and sorry, FMLA is like, being for family maternity leave. That could be for anyone, someone could take family leave, men can take that as well. So but I think certainly it affects women more. But, when someone's out for a few months or whatnot, I had people covering for me, and then those people gained really valuable, great skills. Then when you come back from leave, it's really hard to be like, okay, now go back to your old jobs. So, but you can also look at that as a really great growth opportunity for me and for the people who covered, because now as a leader of a team, I have to think about, okay, I have stronger people on my team. How is that going to affect my job? How's that going to affect my team? And, it's a good opportunity for me to take a higher look at leadership. But it does mean that women have to be flexible and think about this more. This also happened to me. I was on a project at a previous job where I was out of the country. I had a great opportunity, and I was away for a few months at another project at the same job. Then I came back to my old job, and just that mix up. It's hard. So it doesn't just have to be something like FMLA, but I do think that women may experience these sort of shifts more frequently, and just how do you address that in a really positive, helpful way is important.
Sure. And how did you address that, Maddie? So when you mentioned that you came, not just you mentioned when you came back from your job, or when you came back from I don't know, maternity leave. Is there any strategies that you found useful? Alicia, Brianna, if there's anything in terms of, feel free to add your own opinions. Are there any strategies of balancing that healthy work life and then coming back, or something like that? Anything in terms of strategies?
I mean, I think this is a difficult one because, again, it goes back to what the culture of your workplace is, but the flexibility piece is key for women. Whether we like it or not, women do carry more of the emotional labor, the basic household labor, and if you can cultivate a culture of flexibility, even if that does not mean working remotely, even if that means maybe you can come in later in the morning and work a couple hours from home, or whatever it might be that's acceptable for the workplace, women need it. And so the more, like, I find there's a few things that I might say today that I find it's my responsibility in my role to advocate for. And so this flexibility and remote work is one of those. And fortunately, we've managed to create that as a part of the team culture. But I know not everyone is as fortunate for that. And I really hope that, leaders in all industries see that this is something that you can do to get really high qualified, amazing people on your teams, and women to be able to have all of the things that they want to have in their lives, like children and a family and things outside of that too. So.
We're not just robots, but professional robots,
Right.
We have other things.
You might have another goal.
Well, yeah, and I feel like I work a lot better professionally when my personal life is in check as well. When I have my hobbies, when I see my friends, I have time for my family. I think that's something that is really important, and really important for both institutions and companies to recognize that people work better when they're, in all aspects of their life, are doing well. So yeah, I love that. Brianna, is there any, what do you think about this question? So in terms of healthy work, why is it so important, a healthy work-life balance? Have you had any strategies? They were great strategies from Alicia and Maddie, but is there anything else that you could think of?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can't speak to children. I mean, I don't have children, but I do want them. And it has been something that I've thought about, especially when I've had situations where we were interviewing someone and they had been out of work for a little bit because they had to make that choice. This was pre-COVID. And we were deciding whether they were qualified to come back, even though they had taken time on their own to develop their skills in the time to get back into the workforce. And that really did impact me into thinking of like choosing. I know that now we are fortunate for a lot of organizations to work remote and that a lot of organizations are starting to implement that. But I think it's important like to give women that choice with having a child, but also still keeping their skills and their work life something away from the family if that's what they choose. Um, as someone who doesn't have children but still likes to develop their hobbies, I feel like I do get better in my job when I have time away
Yeah.
and I have time to think and be creative in other outlets. I come back stronger. I think it's very important that organizations even look at it from a selfish standpoint of how can we develop better employees. It's by giving them that time away, that space to be uh, human beings and then come back and give results back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, Maddie, did you want to add
Oh,
something?
I was going to say, and nurturing all types of relationships, friendships, and your support system around you is really important for everyone, men and women, regardless of if you have children or not. And you come back to work, refreshed, and you have a good support system around you when you need it. So that's important.
It's super important, and I think from what it actually goes really nicely onto our second theme, which we're wanting to cover, because it's sounding from what you guys are saying that it feels like there's a bottom up side of things and there's a top down side of things as well. It's sounding like there needs to be some sort of support from the institutions as well in terms of getting these systems, policies in place so that women can feel supported and be at their best in the workplace. So that's kind of coming on to our second theme, because I know this is something we're going to have a talk about in the second theme, which is about empowering leadership. Which is looking at the ways that we can encourage women to take on leadership positions in higher education, and also the challenges faced in terms of getting to those leadership positions. So the first question we have with that is just a really sounds like an obvious question to us, but just bringing it to the attention of the audience. What unique perspectives, experiences, benefits do women bring to leadership roles, particularly in higher education structural design? That's a general question, but for you guys, particularly in terms of higher education and instructional design, is there anything in particular you feel that women bring to those roles? I don't know, Alicia, if you want to start, if it's good to start with you.
Sure. I mean, the immediate thing I thought of was that a big part of instructional design is building relationships, I think. So I'll admit the majority of my team are women, not by any intentional purpose. It just ends up that way. But I believe that the people on my team are really good at cultivating those relationships. And there's something, see, I'm trying not to be too like, women are better at building relationships than men, because that's not true.
But there is a tendency for, we can say it is a tendency, whether it be social or whether it was socialized for it to happen. But I agree, women tend
right,
to.
like, I think, Maddie, you said maybe women tend to be nurturing and like they can, do that. Now that can also, be a negative for women too. Like you have, again, the labor of I think I met some folks who do this group called the Cupcake group. I think it's on LinkedIn. Anyway, they said like, who buys the cupcakes for the office? it's usually the women, right? Or who organize the birthday parties, or
Who remembers the birthdays? Who reminds the men of the birthdays?
right, exactly. So like there's a balance, I think, in that where we as women naturally tend to be able to build those relationships, but on the flip side have to be careful about letting it, balancing that, using it for a positive, not being taken advantage of. That's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say. So
Sure.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things I think women bring to the table. And then I also believe that we as women are tend to. I feel like the communication piece is a little bit different, and I think that connects to the relationship building too. But I've noticed there is a difference in communication. So I find that to be a positive, especially on a team mostly of women. And the men on my team are great too. If you're watching,
Yeah.
you're
Men, you are fantastic. If any of you are watching this, but yeah, communication is a big one as well. That I definitely that rings a bell with me as well. So, Maddie, is there anything that you've got to say around that?
Yeah, I I agree. I mean, with this question, I would want to be careful that obviously like people are different and not everyone has these same skills and men have them too as well, of course. But I mean, sort of if we're speaking in generalities, I agree that women tend to be more communicative. You know, Alicia, I totally agree. Building relationships is a key skill needed in higher ed. And I think, skills like active listening, kind of hearing someone else out, that's a great skill that women can bring. I would also add flexibility, but again, I totally agree. You want to be careful. Like, what I mean by flexibility is like, it doesn't mean, oh, doing whatever's needed at any hour, da da da. But it means like, okay, if the project is requiring a different thing, that's what we'll need to do. Like that flexibility that like this project may not look like we thought it was going to be. That's okay. That kind of flexibility, I think, is a really key skill that I think many women bring. Of course, men have that skill as well and can bring that, but I've certainly noticed that more
Sure.
among women.
Amazing, Brianna. What do you think in terms of this question?
Yeah, I agree with what Alicia and Maddie have said so far. This is something that I've grappled with. I don't know that it's necessarily something that inherently women have, or it's something that we're bred to have. Like, and I've been thinking that in terms of men as well, and how they shine in the workplace. Is it because that's what is encouraged out of them, or is it just because it's innately there? But I have seen in a lot of like circles, men who do care about relationships, but I have to agree in a lot of the like collaboration pieces of like where I've worked, it's been mostly the women who have been pushing that. Also, I don't want to say creativity because men can be creative as well. It's just, I think I've seen a lot of strengths in women thinking outside of the box of like, oh, this is just the status quo. This is the policies that we have to like follow, and women kind of thinking of creative solutions of how we get to where we want to go and how it kind of like shines a little bit outside of what we've normally done.
Sure.
That flexibility, maybe. Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, agree. And I don't know what I just adding to those points, just from my own perspective, I feel that, and obviously again, not wanting to stereotype or pigeonhole, because I know a lot of fantastic men that have this quality as well. But I find that female leaders that I've had in my professional career have often been the ones that have been empathetic to if I'm having a rough day, or if a personal issue has happened, or I need to run to the doctors for 10 minutes. I've often found, and it's again, not wanting to stereotype, but it's often the women that have that more empathetic, okay, go and do what you need to do side of things, and then and come back and be ready to be fresh. I think empathy is a big one as well. That I personally have really, really valued in the women that I've had in leadership positions as well. So, yeah.
I'd love to tag on to that because I think related to that empathy piece is that I myself, as a woman in my professional world, have experienced probably everything you could imagine in terms of, gender inequity, wage gaps, the maternal wall, being passed over for promotions, all of the things that you could possibly think of. And because of that, I'm very sensitive to other women who are on my team and how I can help them succeed or reach whatever they want to. So my experiences have, hopefully, I'm channeling them for a positive for others as well. And I couldn't do that if I didn't have those experiences.
Sure. Love that one. So just maybe, as that's incredible, and that kind of leads on to our second question of the empowering leadership. And I know we've touched on this a little bit in the first bit, which is how can higher education institutions, so talking about institutions at that top down level, better support women and promote women into leadership positions? Obviously, we're speaking specifically here about leadership, but I know we've touched a little bit on inequality at institution level. So if there's anything that you guys want to say, what can education institutions be doing to help promote that female empowerment? Brianna, what do you think on this one? Is there anything particularly that you're thinking?
Great question, like all the questions. I think mentorship is definitely a big one.
Yeah.
And leadership skills training. I think if institutions can definitely offer more of those opportunities for women, just because I know that I have valued from hearing from other women kind of their path, their challenges, their strategies. So if we can have a space where we can collaborate with other women and share those experiences and learn from them, I think that would be very beneficial to women in higher ed.
Yeah, love that. What about you, Maddie? What do you think on that subject?
Yeah, I think those are some great ideas. I think kind of building more like rungs in the ladder for opportunities for people in higher ed. Like more assistant director roles, or just more sort of, I don't know how else to describe it, rungs in the ladder, just for more opportunities, for more growth, more supported growth. And also, I think using some of this change and flux that we talked about as opportunities for growth for employees. If someone's covering for someone else, whether it's for an afternoon or a few months or whatever, that's a fantastic opportunity for growth for both people. And to really, just any organization should harness that. I've seen some of this, which is good, but I think even more could be helpful.
Sure, like we're going in the right direction, definitely better than it was, but there's still a lot of room to definitely. What about you, Alicia? What do you think on that one?
So I'll go back to the wage gap issue. So women still are earning 16% less than men, which is 84 cents to the dollar. That's from the Lean In website. And women of color are even lower on that. So it's affecting them more. So I believe that, a part of what I can do in my role is do salary reviews, making sure that there is equity across team members. And if there isn't, pushing for an equity increase. We fortunately have those structures in place at my institution. So that's something I can do at like a team level. Institution level, I think what I have noticed is that, like I said, there are still, even in higher ed, a lot more men in positions of power. There has to be an intentional effort to change that structure, and that is a harder one to figure out. But one thing that I've done, we have these yearly events, and one thing that I immediately did when I was a part of the committee, which fortunately I was involved in the planning committee of this event years ago, I questioned why we were having only white men as the keynote speakers of these events. So laying the groundwork to ensure that, at all areas of the work, there is inclusive approaches to and representation of all types of people. And so there are little things that I've learned along the way that I can do to affect change regardless. I mean, when I was involved in that, I was maybe an assistant director or something. So I've always tried to look for those ways of making changes where I can.
Yeah, love that. No, thank you so much for those. I think it's always going to be a mixture, isn't it, of top down and bottom up. But I definitely feel like there's a lot more that institutions can be doing. So it's really great to hear you guys' opinion on that. So thank you for those ones. So just going on to our final theme now, which is all about community. So I know we've already touched on this, and Brianna, you made a fantastic point there earlier of mentorship and the importance of females supporting females, or as we're calling this webinar, women empowering women. I think there's something really, really important and really, really powerful in that. So I think a small question I've got is, how have you personally benefited from supportive women in your professional career? Feel free to share anecdotes, or feel free just to give a general opinion. But if we start with you, Maddie, how have you personally benefited from supportive women?
Oh, thanks. I mean, I've had some really amazing bosses and managers over the years. I feel really lucky, at all my jobs. I would say when I first started at GW, my manager was so supportive, and she really guided me. And I was there to really build up a team, build up the instructional design team, which was a fantastic opportunity. So she really supported me in terms of growing the team and how to do that. And that was a new opportunity for me. So I didn't have as much experience in that work. And she had a lot of confidence in me, which at first I was like, oh my gosh, but it really, I think her confidence really helped me. She always approached things in a really positive way. And that really helped me build my confidence, I think, seeing that, she was like, yeah, no problem, you got this. And it helped me a lot, I think, in terms of how I handled things.
Helping you to get rid of that imposter syndrome, if you will, got in there.
Yeah. I mean, I think mentor is a great thing as well. I think it can be tricky. I don't know. I think it can be tricky to find mentors sometimes. It can be, maybe you might not want your boss to be your mentor, or it depends on the relationship you have with that boss. But yeah, that's another good way too.
Sure, love that. Thank you, Maddie. What about you, Brianna? What do you think on this one? So, have you personally benefited from supportive women in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of influential women in my field that I've looked up to, and I've wanted to aspire to lead exactly like them or similar to them, with like new hires or anybody who needed help on the job. I've also benefited from them nudging me in the direction that maybe wasn't in my radar. I wasn't aware of those opportunities, and they just casually said, hey, there's this opportunity I thought you'd be good for. Why don't you check it out? So I think mentorship, not that they should do it for you or find those opportunities for you, but oftentimes you might be a little scared to look for those on your own. So once they put that in kind of in your mindset, it pushes you to kind of go for them.
Yeah. I think a lot of women have it in there that they know their own worth, but sometimes it takes a little bit of someone else to believe in you to put you on the right track, to be like, oh, I didn't think I could do that, or have you tried applying for this position, or have you thought about asking for X amount more in your salary review? And you're like, oh, I hadn't thought about, can I ask that? Yeah, you can. Yes, you can ask. I think it's often been women, I agree, that have pushed me in that direction. You know, planting the seed in your head, I think, is really important. So thank you. Alicia, what about you? What about you in terms of this question?
I definitely have benefited from supportive women, just even from a good friend of mine encouraging me to go into a doctorate program where I had, just to what you were saying, never thought about that before, or that I could do that, and I did it. And so I think I'm going to say, though, what I focus on now is allies, finding those people that are going to, well, in some situations, just let me vent freely when needed, and vice versa, that, we feel comfortable enough to do that. And I have some good, friends in the workplace, we can do that. And then there are also other allies within my institution, both men and women, frankly, but, there are a lot of women that I have built and cultivated those relationships with. Interestingly, though, and I don't mean to sound negative, but I read recently, and I really wish I could find this article, but about how the more a woman builds her networks, the less positive it is for the woman.
Wow.
And there's all sorts of like for a man, if they build these, complex networks and it gets more and more, the higher up they go in leadership, the better it is for them. For women, it tends to be not as beneficial for them. And I can't remember why. That's why I want to find that article. But it's just always, there's this double standard. So I think that's why I focus on this, like, sort of allyship, like how can I cultivate those relationships and know the people that I can rely on and lean on for whatever it is that needs to get done. So.
Fantastic. Amazing. Well, that kind of leads us on to our last question of the webinar. I just want to open this up as a free kind of, what do you guys think? So feel free to drop in with your own thoughts and what you think about it. But this one is, just to end, what advice would you give to any woman who is looking to start their career? We put it as higher education. So in higher education or instruction design, any advice that you'd give them? Feel free to open that up for any advice in general, but particularly as we're focusing on higher education. What advice would you guys give? Feel free to kind of, I'm opening the floor there in terms of questions or in terms of your answers to that one. If there's anyone in particular that wants to start, or...
So advice. One of the things I was thinking of that has always helped me is negotiation. I actually took a Women in Leadership executive course through Johns Hopkins, and one of the parts of it was like a 3-day course, was the negotiation piece. And we also were assigned a coach, and so that was a big thing that I focused on with my coach, was how to feel comfortable negotiating. But basically what it boils down to is advocating for myself or others. And if you do request a raise or a promotion, women who do that are twice as likely to get that raise or promotion. Wow. So it's really important for women to think about that. And one of the things that somebody asked me, it may have been my coach or somebody else, but was they said to me, you're always willing to, speak up or advocate for other people, because that's just sort of my ethos in my professional career. She was like, why aren't you doing that for yourself? Like, you have a family, you have needs, you have a career. Like, why is it harder for you to do this for yourself? And it really put that into context for me. Like, oh, I deserve things too. Like
a light moment, you're like, actually.
Yes, exactly.
That's a good question.
Right. So I've carried that with me, and just the idea that even though it's uncomfortable and it feels very weird, if you haven't done it before, that negotiation piece is really important.
Wow, I love that. Amazing. Maddie, Brianna, what do you think on that? Or just in terms of what Alicia said, or anything in terms of advice? Feel free to ask.
Do you want to go?
Yeah, go for it.
Sure.
Maddie, go for it. We're being polite here.
I feel like this might be sort of not opposite, but a little bit contrary to what we were saying. I was thinking about this question in terms of, like, when I hire people on my team, I think those kind of skills that we talked about, I think sometimes they're called soft skills, which is not really a great term, but the sort of skills of like active listening, influencing others, working with others who think in a different way, like those kind of skills are so important and also really important to emphasize when you're kind of pitching yourself or applying for jobs, because those are skills that are really hard to teach. They're sort of part of who we are. So I think kind of emphasizing and working on those skills are really key. And the tech skills are really important for jobs, but at least for me, I find them a little bit more teachable. So things like ID skills, like developing in Blackboard, or technology skills, I mean, those are definitely key to emphasize, but I think those kind of soft skills sometimes get forgotten about how important they are, and especially in higher ed, like building relationships. Somebody mentioned that. So I definitely think like emphasizing those kind of skills. And I also think in terms of like kind of like speaking the way of like higher ed, or kind of getting to know the higher ed culture. If you're coming from like a K through 12 or a different environment, kind of getting to know like what terms are used in higher ed, what are the key issues in higher ed, and sort of getting to know the environment there a little bit would be really helpful too, in terms of, finding a role there and building relationships in that field.
Sure. Do your research before. I think that's a big one, of course.
Yeah.
Sure. Brianna, what do you think on that one in terms of advice? What advice would you give to any woman who's thinking of starting a career in higher ed?
I would just add, I love what Alicia and Maddie mentioned. I also didn't think about negotiation. That is a very good point. And those soft skills, yes, absolutely. I would just add about thinking about your uniqueness and how it will fit in higher education, because you have experiences that no one else has and skills that no one else has. So see how that will fit into what you're looking for, and always like believe in yourself when there are situations, because you will encounter it in higher ed, you'll encounter it in any job that you pursue, where you're feeling insecure, that imposter syndrome that we talked about. Just going back and returning to those like activities or those things that empower you to kind of build you up to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, of course. I think that's a big one for women, right? Remembering your uniqueness is what makes you who you are, and not to be. I think. At least I was always taught growing up or socialized that in order to get by in my professional career, I had to act like a man. I had to make man decisions, and I had to be cutthroat, and I'm just not like that at all. That's just not who I am. So I think it's just remembering that what we went back to there in terms of women in leadership, you bring, as you are, you bring your own uniqueness. I love that, and just embracing that, because that will make you stand out, and that will make you different from everyone else. So yeah, amazing. So thank you so much, guys. So I think that is it in terms of all of our questions. I just wanted to say thank you so much to our incredible panelists here. Thank you so much for joining us. So I'd just like to say thank you, obviously, to Alicia, Maddie, and Brianna for their fantastic contributions here. Are there any final things that you're wanting to say, or final thoughts? There doesn't have to be. I always put it out there. Otherwise, just to thank you for coming along.
Just great being here today. Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks for having us.
It was.
So much.
Brianna, I really like what you said about finding your uniqueness.
Yeah, me too.
Your uniqueness. I think that's really key. That's great.
Yeah.
Recently, I've been trying to find that on my own, which is why I guess I'm in that headspace.
Yeah, I think we're all on that journey still. I think, trying to find that uniqueness and being proud of that uniqueness, and remember that's what's going to make you who you are. Yeah.
I just started poetry lessons last night. So, I mean, not poetry, pottery. Goodness, I could probably write poetry on the pottery. Pottery, and that's a part of me trying to connect back to.
Is it like proper pottery throwing?
Yeah, like on the wheel. Yeah.
Oh, so cool.
So I made like 3 weird looking pots last night, but
Awesome.
Amazing. I rewatched Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. There you go.
nice. That sounds like fun.
Oh, amazing. Well, there you go. Well, thank you so much to you guys for joining the conversation today. I really, really appreciate that. I'm going to say goodbye to you guys now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much as well for all of you that have joined us today. We really appreciate it for our higher education edition of Women Empowering Women. Thank you so much to our fantastic panelists. I really appreciated all of the fantastic things they had to say. Please feel free as well to, I'll put some links in the chat if you're interested in finding out more about Genially. I will put some links in the chat so you can have a look at all of the fantastic things that we have got to offer. And anything, and do as well, make sure you are sharing your thoughts again with us on everything that we've discussed today. I will put our socials on the screen so you can follow us. And thank you so much for joining us. Genially does have some fantastic templates available for International Women's Day, so make sure you're checking them out in the panel. And we also have some fantastic widgets that we have created specifically for International Women's Day, which are only available to the end of the month. So if you are thinking of creating something in honor of International Women's Day or International Women's Month, do please take a look at that. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you super soon. Bye.